Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Everyday Excellence. I'm your host, Todd Baldwin, and today we have Barry Westbrook, the owner of Dock Air. Barry, how are you doing today?
Great.
Good. We were just chatting. Barry is up in the Nashville, Tennessee area. They had tons of ice, so we were just chatting. He said it's almost all melted and gone away, so that's good. Barry, tell me a little bit about Dock Air. I'm sure you could do much better introducing your company than I ever could.
Well, we've been around for since 2002. Uh, Gone through a lot of changes and evolutions. Started out with just me and one other gentleman. Found that came from a consulting background. So when we started Dock Air, that was a lot of what we do. But as a certified industrial hygienist and professional engineer, a lot of what we were doing was essentially reaching out and providing expertise. At that time, the indoor air quality arena was really coming into its own, especially with the drivers about mold. That was a topic of interest at the time. It's got even bigger since then. And so, being a certified industrial hygienist, it kind of allowed me to to exploit that expertise and certification. And but then, as we developed the company, we started getting into more essentially building science and diagnosing building problems. So you call it building forensics. That's still the heart of what we do today is understanding building problems. And but we also have crews and folks that go out and work on sites to actually fix problems.
Okay. Um, 20 plus years in business. Congratulations on that. I love talking to entrepreneurs. I know business is hard. I always say, no matter what business industry you're in, it's tough. Anybody that's been around for 20 years, you've got to be doing actually a lot of things right. Tell me a little bit about if we just look back in those early years, say those first 2 to 3 years, what are some key lessons that you learned back then in running a dock air in this new, industry?
Well, I think making sure you have the adequate financial reserves and personnel. When I sold that, and so I was trying to figure out what was next for me. So there were, options such as becoming an environmental health and safety manager for a corporation. And the consulting opportunity just kind of came to me from existing relationships. And I just kind of followed that. And I never really realized how much of an entrepreneur spirit I had until I got older. I mean, I was a kid, I used to remember trying to sell things, Christmas cards and seeds and all kinds of things. And I never really thought that much about it at the time. But now that I look back on it, it's like I was always kind of intrigued by the idea of promoting and selling things. So when I got into the dock air business, there's so many different opportunities to exploit. So that's what I've done a lot is just kind of follow what our customers need. You look at and see what the things are that are out there that are begging for someone to take it on, and especially technical issues. Being a science person, the things that are more technical are probably going to attract me more. But a lot of the work we do is just very mundane, hard work. So we're kind of a hybrid company. We have a lot of science, applied science work, but then at the same time, a lot of the things we do is just, hard physical labor, working, the crawl spaces and HVAC and plumbing and, yeah, stormwater where you're digging trenches and installing retaining walls and things like that.
Yeah, that does definitely, I would say, definition of just hard work, right? Old fashioned hard work. When we talked a little bit last week, and you said, really, I guess at a high level, we fix sick buildings, right? And so, explain a little bit of that to our listeners. When you say a sick building, and you guys are going in there and trying to, get this building back in the shape it needs to be, what are some of the things that would identify, a building being sick?
Well, one of the biggest issues for us in our is the whole idea of air quality. And right now we're going through a transition with codes. Most of the residential buildings that we all grew up with, they don't really have a ventilation system. You know, we talk about HVAC, but there is no V. The fresh air you get in your house is just what leaks in and leaks out. So you may, in a lot source of fresh air is the crawl space. People don't know it, but that's kind of the way it is. So leaky ductwork is a terrible problem when it's come. That's how leaky they are. That's a statistic from the government, federal government. So one of the things that I work to do is to try to explain to people where their air comes from, because there's a focus on mold and people are looking at maybe a little bit of mold on a windowsill or something like that, which is probably insignificant and doesn't really affect. So, but there's a lot of different ways a building can be sick. Um, but the way we put it together is to look at the building envelope and try to understand what goes in, what goes out, and control the quality of the air inside.
I got you. I got you. Are there of all the services you offer, right? Looking at the site, is there one that you guys do more work than the other, or is the main revenue driver? Or are they all about equal?
Well, in one sense, the word, there's one practice, I guess, that kind of establishes most of what we do, and that's called the diagnostic visit. We refer to the people that go out typically on a day-to-day basis as diagnosticians. So we get calls from homeowners, from real estate professionals, property managers, and could be anybody, business owners. And, you know, they have found us either on an internet search or by word of mouth referrals, and they've got an issue. So it could be they're trying to sell their property and they found mold in the crawl space, or they've got allergy problems or odors, or, you know, could be just anything. And then so we go out and basically it's very much like if you go to the doctor, you had symptoms, or the doctor's going to talk to you and try to understand your symptoms and then put that together with all the facts and hopefully get you on a path to recovery.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, being around for 20 plus years, culture's got to be a big thing in your organization. Let's talk a little bit about the culture. I'm just curious, what are you looking for in your team when you in the hiring phrase, right? What's something that, hey, this is fits right what we're looking for versus I don't think they'd be a good fit. What are you looking for that's gonna work well with your culture?
Premise of the company is our core values.
Hmm.
So, uh, in practice, anyone that is going to be a dock air employee is going to have to embrace those core values. So I got them up on the wall here, but one of the ones that we talk about the most is we call science over sales. Science, and what that means is that we're going to focus on making sure we understand the issues, and we're not going to just go in there and try to unload something that we have on the pickup truck or whatever, just because it's something that uh, you know that we would like to profit from. So that's analogous, I guess, to your family physician. Hopefully, that person is going to be somebody that's going to be there for you, and they certainly are going to be well paid, but at the same time, they're not going to be trying to force something on you that you don't really need. So we got that. We also have one that is above and beyond is one of them. The other is own it, you know, which means that when you're out there in the field, that you're going to uh, own the things you're working on. And then communication, even though that's not one of our core values, to have great teamwork, you got to have great communication. And so we work to have accurate communication and make sure that we talk to each other and not past each other.
Yeah,
And we get solid, you know, and as a consultant, you know, it's important for me writing reports and that kind of thing to make sure that that what I'm putting on paper is going to be uh, above and beyond in that area with our customers and that kind of thing.
Man, I love it. Customer service is so important. I love the science over sales because you're taking care of the client, right? It's a client first mentality versus, hey, I got a guy out in the street, he's got to hit a sales quota, so he's going to pitch everything on the truck. Um, I'm assuming that has had a huge impact in 20 plus years of being in business as well.
It's probably one of the most fulfilling parts of the business, to when you just recently, one of my neighbors, we went out there and they had already had several different companies out and they had them twisted in so many knots. They really didn't have a problem, not to speak of. And so their problems were minor, but where they were, some of these guys, they were ready to tear the house apart to try to find
Man,
problems that didn't exist. And
wow.
so there was a sense of relief, and I thought, it feels good to be able to come in and be the rescuer when somebody needs help. So that's not, may not be the big revenue generator, but it's certainly a lot as far as satisfaction in the job.
Oh yeah, 100%. I find that in our space too. There's so many bad agencies, digital marketing agencies, and we hear it all the time when we bring on new clients or talking to new potential clients. Hey, it may be Todd, Todd, I love everything you're saying. But the last agency said the same thing. Was, what makes you different? They said the same thing. They promised the moon. And then as soon as we signed up with them, they slowly disappeared. Now we can't find them. But it's just interesting how our industries are so different, but there's so many common, factors to having success and taking care of that client. I'm curious if with all the significant changes going on with our what am I trying to say there with the environment and energy efficient. Have you seen a big increase in demand for people wanting their properties, buildings, residents to be more energy efficient?
I think there's a general movement in that direction. A few years ago, we were involved in ground source heat pumps, so-called geothermal, and a lot of that was driven by the tax breaks or subsidies. When there was like a 30% subsidies, we're in a pretty good area to have ground source heat pumps, geothermal heating and cooling. So that's more of an energy and efficiency play, maybe comfort as well. We are just what's happened right now is the codes have changed and they should have already been established here in Middle Tennessee. The legislature has kind of pushed back on that. I think that a lot of it is people just don't understand ventilation. I tried to explain it, say, imagine that you were building a house out of Tupperware and you put people in the house and just snap the top. Most people understand that that would not work. When I use is when you're a kid and you first learn how to collect lightning bugs, in the summertime, they teach you to poke holes in the top,
Sure.
why would you do that? Well, they gotta have air, right?
Right.
So we know that you've got to have ventilation. So buildings can either be naturally ventilated or they're going to be those are requiring as we move forward that when you build prescribed and a reliable ventilation system so that it's truly an HVAC and not just a heating and air conditioning system. So that's, I think if we could figure out how to get that message across, we have we would have a run on all the stuff that we're doing, but it's just not common knowledge. You still have old timers that'll say, we're building buildings too tight. I'm thinking, no, we're not. It's like you never hear somebody say, well, our submarine is too tight or our boat
Right.
is too tight or our aquarium's too tight. It's like we want the building to be tight. We just need to make sure that we have a way to get the fresh air in there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Makes complete sense.
hardest part of our job, I guess, is to explain all that because a lot of the stuff that we deal with at Dock Air, they're invisible. Radon is invisible. Mold spores are invisible. Heat and cold, air pressure is invisible. Radon, all those different things. So it's it's difficult sometimes to explain things that people can't see. You know, if you have a water leak, it's pretty easy to see. I've got water dripping. You're going to call a plumber, but what about air leaks? You know, they're not as easy to detect.
Yeah, that's a I loved your analogy about poking the holes, in the, top of the jar. It reminds me when, my son and I would go catch grasshoppers up in the mountains and, use them, man, trout bite 'em like crazy. He'd be like, "Why do we have holes? Well, they gotta
Yeah,
breathe,
yeah, yeah.
we gotta ventilate." Um, I'd love to talk a little about marketing with you. Obviously, we're marketers, but I'm always amazed, and interested just hearing, business owners' take on what's working, what's not working. You did mention, people find you online. In that digital marketing space, what channels do you find, are best for reaching your ideal client?
Well, it has been marketing has been a challenge. The company that I was with before, I was actually responsible for the marketing, although I had no real basis in marketing, but somebody had to take it, and so I did. Um, but our, I guess one of our kind of steadfast and you know, successful methods is doing educational seminars. So we have classes that are approved for credit for realtors. And so we do this 3-hour course, and it's, got 3 hours to be able to talk about all the little nuances and things that can make or break you as a realtor. I really think that a good realtor or real estate professional, there's some things, some secrets that we have. They're not, shouldn't be secrets, but they are. And if you know those things, it's going to save you a lot, probably make you money and keep you from losing sales, and also keep your customers happy as well. So that's been our go-to. Get those scheduled, appear before, and so we become kind of the answer person, the subject matter expert, and explain
Right.
why things are the way they are. And then our website, I guess that's the touchstone for a lot of people. But we could do better. I mean, I really believe that we have not. I would give us probably a C minus, um, because I think that there are methods out there. It's just that as a small company, sometimes you get so caught up in the day to day work that it's hard to figure out, what do you do? Are you going to hire people? It's tough, especially in our business, because there's quite a bit of science knowledge that you need as a basis to do this work. We're a little bit like crime scene investigators. If you watch those kind of shows, you kind of see you got to take all the information and try to figure out what it means. And so it takes someone with, some basic science knowledge. I don't think you have to be an engineer, but you know, you understand how things work, the better it is. And then I think you have to have a curious mind and like to be able to solve problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you'd mentioned the education with the realtors, in that real estate space. So we talked earlier, you said, a lot of times leads come from, um, someone trying to sell a building, someone trying to buy a building. There's problems, inspectors come by or appraisal, whatnot. Who's going to fix it, right? Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So way I look at it is, what would I do if it were mine?
Right.
And I even make that. And I said, just imagine you and I own this building. What will we do with the knowledge that we have now and the expertise that we have now? Certainly, if I owned it, I'm not going to waste money on things that are not going to give me a good return on investment. So I try to lay out all the different things you could do and talk about what you would achieve doing it this way. Sometimes people want to do things that I wouldn't necessarily advise them to do, but it's what they want. Um, for instance, if they want walls, I may think that we don't need to do anything looking behind walls, but sometimes the customer is just needs to have that reassurance that there's not something behind those walls that's going to be bad.
Sure. Sure.
In that case, you just may not be something I'd recommend, but we're glad to do it because peace of mind is important. And if that's what's going to take, then that's what we do.
Sure. Are there any new trends in this space that you're excited about or really watching closely, paying attention to?
Um, well, the big one here in Middle Tennessee right now is how are we going to get these ventilation systems installed? So the HVA, as I said, it's interesting that the HVAC industry has not really been much of a V at all, even in the commercial space. It's kind of a uh, so if you're building a new home installed without creating other problems, for instance, moisture management problems, mold problems, because in Middle Tennessee in June, July, and August, you might as well be Miami. And if you just start bringing in fresh air and you don't know how to do it right, you can create humidity problems and moist and mold and moisture problems. So it's a little tricky. Try it, but it's like you want to be comfortable. You want to also want to have fresh air, and but you don't want to have a moisture problem that's going to grow mold and other things.
Absolutely. So some of the things you're kind of looking forward to, what are some of the challenges you see coming down the road that's facing this industry? You
Well,
mentioned ventilation many
yeah.
times.
Well, for one of the things that I'm seeing, this is not just in this arena, but you have big companies wanting to roll up service companies and just and then they want to just it's all about revenue generation. So that kind of flies in the face of what we're trying to do. We think there are plenty of things we can sell you, but we want to make sure that it's something you need. And the problem is that most of these industries are not science before sales. They're sales before everything. And so you have people that are being taught to go out and foist products or services on people. And I think that they don't realize that it's not necessarily because they need it. It's because that somebody's trying to meet a sales goal. So, uh, I'm not sure what to do with that. I mean, as a consumer, you know, I see it, and as a marketer, I see it, and as a, professional, I see it. How to stop it? I think that, you've always heard buyer beware. It's been around forever and ever, and I think it's still and now we have so many more sophisticated and ways of trying to persuade people to buy things. I know you know, I, I'm I'm bad about clicking on things, and I'm buying stuff that I think I can't live without. And they come in and they start to pile up. Sometimes I'll have stuff in a box here. I haven't even opened it yet, but at the time when I clicked on it, man, I said, I've got to have that.
Yeah. Hey, Amazon shows up at our house every day.
Yeah. Oh
Uh,
yeah. How did we get along without that?
oh, I know. I think it's just so easy, right? It just magically appears at your doorstep. I chuckle every time. I'm like, oh, another package. So,
Yeah.
uh, the bad thing is rarely are those packages for me. All right. I'm like, hey, can you buy me something, honey?
I can relate to that. It's kind of like you're looking around under the Christmas tree.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
Right.
Hey, that was not mine. That was not mine. Well, as we kind of close up here, I'm just curious. Anything you'd like to share with listeners about Dock Air or tips for those looking to improve their building's comfort or energy efficiency?
Well, yeah, you could go to our website. We're gonna putting out content, and it'll be a little bit of a MythBusters format because it'll be the stuff you didn't know, the things you wanted to know but you didn't know to ask, kind of things. But and if anyone has a specific question about their building problems, whether it's structural or water or whatever it might be, feel free to send me a text or email, and I'll be glad to respond.
Absolutely. Well, Mary, I try to keep these around 25 minutes. We're just a little over, but I could talk to you all day. I find your industry really interesting because it's just something that um, you don't hear a lot about, right? I mean, but obviously there's a big need out there to keep these buildings in shape, better energy efficient. So I really appreciate you jumping on and sharing with us. If our listeners are looking out, want to get in touch with you, what is the best way to reach you at Doc Air?
Well, my email is bwestbrook@docair.com. Go to docair.com. Hopefully you can find us. If you can't, we really need to work on the marketing. But you should be able to find us pretty easily.
Yes, sir. DocAir.com does come up. Your website is active, so no issues as far as it popping up. But thanks again so much, Barry. It's been a pleasure getting to visit with you and just learn more about your industry.
All right. Well, thank you, Ty.
You
Appreciate
bet.
it.